Greetings, I am SupernovaBlade, and welcome to the 6th rendition of Stories in History of SupernovaBlade. Now, if you watched any of my previous 5 episodes, you might recognize that the format is a little different. Rather than having the background just be a solid background with my microskin just narrating the story, I decided instead to have a bunch of Metabang Paint time-lapses I've made recently. More specifically, the ones I'll be playing in the background of this video are taken from a poetry project I did at the beginning of my current year of university, as well as some fan art I made of Frankie from the webcomic Castoff. So, now that I explained what is new and what will be happening with the episodes from here on out, on to the topic of the video. For this video, I was just going to talk about a very small and very annoying story that happened to me during one of my university semesters. During one of my semesters, more specifically in my second year, I was taking a photography class for my major. With this class, we were experimenting with both film photography and digital photography. I hadn't had too much photography experience, but I was that type of person who loved taking pictures of nature whenever they went out for a walk. Yet, this time, I was taking a picture from an actual full-on bulky camera with film strips and all. For the context of this video, I'm not going to be referring to the digital camera portion because that is not the topic for this video. Only the film camera experience will be discussed, because that's what's part of the story. Anyway, now onto the story. When I started taking this class, we were given a camera to use for practicing our new skills of film photography and a roll of film for taking these shots. Each roll had 36, I think, slots in it, and we had to put them in the dark. Otherwise, the film would get stained, and you will not get good results out of it. Anyone who knows film photography well would know that by memory. When I got my camera, I got this camera in a rather nifty leather case that kept the camera safe. For the first few classes, we just learned about how the camera worked and the importance of how to get photos with film photography to come out the best. We also took some photos and turned them into a photo collage prior to using the cameras, but that was just a small assignment that didn't have to do with the story particularly. Eventually, it was time for us to actually use the cameras. I tried mine out for the first time, adjusting the settings, and ran into my first problem. No matter what I did, I could not get the lens to face the right way, which gave me a very thoughtful look into my left pupil. It was like being stuck in the first second of that one logo for MGM, but it doesn't play. Kinda like that. It was actually quite an easy fix. Well, not for me, but it was for one of my classmates, who I am going to refer to as Sammy for this video. My professor made it very clear that we should work on a lot of our cooperation with other students, which, for an introvert like me, is easier said than done. Nobody wanted to help me, except for Sammy. Sammy was one of the presidents for the internship system that my university provided, and because of her tight schedule, I had to come in the middle of one of her seminars in order to have her help me with my camera struggles. All she did was just adjust a knob, and I had my problem completely solved. Originally, when I was trying with that, it wouldn't budge. Unfortunately, that was the least of the pain and annoyances that this camera would give me. Now, onto the main course. That same week, we were assigned to shoot our first roll of film and display it in the Lightroom. So I spent that day after the class period going out for a walk, since this class was only on Fridays, taking as many pictures as I could with this new camera I had, and writing down my whole exposure log. Seemed easy and simple enough, right? Nothing is going to go wrong! Well, this is foreshadowing. So, after class, I walked out and went out for my walk. I got some pretty nice pictures of the nearby park. It all seemed like it was going fishingly. Eventually, I managed to reserve some time to go to the photography studio and process the photos for the next class period and potentially get some for the critique that was in 3 weeks. I did just that, and there were 2 other classmates that were also there, their photos. But I had arrived earlier and actually got a head start on getting my photos printed before the two of them did. When I eventually finished, I took a look at my photos and I observed what came out. Do you know what came out of all of these photos I took at the park and the walk? Nothing. Zilch. Nada. Absolutely nothing at all. Well, there was a small swipe in the middle of one of the photos that was vaguely in the shape of a river, but it was too foggy to decipher by anyone except for me. I took a look at the roll I just put together of nothingness and just felt broken. There it was, next to the rolls of the other two students. It hurt. I just remember just leaving the room and then going back to my dorm, sitting in the living area, in the dark, alone, no speaking, staring at the floor in disbelief. Hours wasted before me. It stung. So, fast forwarding to the next class, I told my professor about what happened, and she was nice enough to give me another try with another roll. She took a good look at my failed roll, still hanging in the lightroom, and said, "That's weird. From the looks of this, you did everything right, so why did nothing come out?" She pondered. So I tried again with the new roll, taking the same pictures over and over. Now, here's another thing about this camera I had. The lever for switching the film strips often got stuck for some reason, and I would have to start the rolls all over again if that happened. It was really annoying. But it was definitely the least of my problems, as I am about to explain. Eventually, I took photos of whatever I could find, put them on the new exposure log. I had to create this one myself because my exposure log that came with my photography packet had the pictures and records of the first roll, and I already explained what happened to that one. Anyway, the long and the short of it was that I tried using the chemicals to get the photos on the second roll. Just like the first, I was really, really nervous. Not going to lie. I just needed to cross my fingers that it would come out properly. I finished up and checked the results, and it didn't come out. Not even a sliver of a river or anything. It was just solid gray. I am honestly surprised I wasn't crying. But I had felt so low in that moment. I was getting very flustered. Fast forward to the following class, I told my professor about how detrimental it was, and she said, "You know, at this point, this isn't even your fault. It's the camera's fault. Every semester, someone ends up with a shitty camera that doesn't work. And unfortunately, this semester, it was you. Now, it is time to turn it in and get a new one. I'm going to send this one over to the repair shop." I accepted and checked out a new camera. And I'm just going to say it. This new camera, although it didn't have the leather protection case that the old one had, it was better in every way. My favorite part was the fact that it unrolled the film when the strip was done by itself. Also, the old camera, which I don't think I mentioned for this whole video, was a Nikon Nikkor Mat. And if you know something about the rarity of cameras and the sort, especially with film cameras, you would know that they are super rare to come across since they were only in production from 1967 to 1975. Due to its age, these cameras have been rotting in quality, and considering how my camera was, it certainly delivered. Anyway, after I got this new camera, I was told that my dad was driving down to my university to visit me and, additionally, wanted to take me downtown to take some pictures with this new camera I got. At this point, I knew this was going to be a make-or-break situation. I had went through so much bullshit with the old camera, so I was desperate to get some good pictures on this new camera. I was really nervous. This was the one class that had been giving me so much anxiety in the moment, and I needed to make sure to get something out so that I didn't feel like everything in my life was turning against me. After all, the film photography final critique was in less than a week at this point, and I just needed just one roll to come out properly, and I could feel satisfied. And as the kids all say, done as with this. So once my dad officially arrived to visit me, it was time for me to take those pictures. Actually, before then, I started experimenting with the new rolls of film I got after I got 2 rolls of nothing. I kind of felt bad for all the chances I had to be given, but I don't need to at all. It wasn't my fault that the camera wasn't working as it was supposed to. I took pictures of the same things over and over as the previous few rolls, kept printing those pre-made exposure logs for each roll, and I was ready for when my father arrived. My father knew about all the trouble I was undergoing at that moment and wanted to take me everywhere I could to take these pictures. I went back to the same park I always visited for the previous 2 rolls that came out to nothing and took pictures of everything I could around me. Hell, my father took me to parts of the park I hadn't even been to before, such as an old fort rotting away with age, where there were now basketball courts and playgrounds, and also a pond with a ginormous geyser that was donated in like 1987. I was thrilled to take so many of these pictures. It was like exploring where I usually went to get new picture ideas I wouldn't have thought of before. After a long afternoon of snapshotting lots and lots of whatever surrounded me, I finally finished that first roll of the 2. My second roll was entirely taken downtown in a city. I'm not going to say which city it was in because I don't want to accidentally dox myself, but my hint is that it starts with C, and the state it is in has 2 other major cities that also start with C. So, for the sake of this video, I'll be referring to it as C City. I started the roll while I was waiting for my dad to do something in the car, so I took a picture of a baseball stadium out of the window of the parking garage. I took a lot of pictures of that baseball stadium, and a lot came out very thoroughly. I also took pictures of other stuff such as water, since one of the largest rivers in the country ran through this city, an elevator door, bicycles, buildings, and many others. I eventually finished that final roll in no time. After my dad left to go back home and I got the rolls all at my disposal to turn into prints, I was ready to take the film and process it into the prints, and I was just crossing my fingers, shaking in nervousness, that this was actually going to be the reel of film that actually gave me success. I was desperate, very desperate for the success. I slipped the different films into the reels in the darkroom and put them in the containers. I read every instruction very, very carefully, making sure I didn't mess up a single step along the way. I put in everything I could. I couldn't mess this up. Every amount of developer, stop bath, fixer remover, everything. I then noticed that something that was happening with the film development was a little strange. In all my previous rolls, I was trying to get the images. I miscalculated the amount of developer I needed for the pictures. I previously did about 3 minutes, but when I actually was doing these new rolls, I had to do it for closer to about 10 minutes. In film photography terms, this would very badly damage the quality of the film by discoloration or blurring. This whole process of getting your film photos to come out can be done in like half an hour, or it could take several hours. It varies. When all was said and done, I officially completed all of the instructions and disposed all of the chemicals in either the sink or a barrel we use for the fixer, because that can't go down the sink because it contains silver. I was actually shaking in fear that all this time was going to be for nothing, and I wasted yet another weekend with my father. I approached that container with the film very slowly, I saw the film. I started to untangle it and squeegee it on the squeegee board, and I was surprised what I saw. But it finally happened. The film strips weren't just big blocks of gray anymore. They were actual pictures this time. The exact pictures I took on the roll, and I could see them clearly like everyone else did on theirs. Yay! Anyway, I gently moved both rolls to squeegee and came to the realization that nothing came out on the park roll, only the downtown city roll. But you know what? I'm not going to make a fuss about that. As long as I had one roll with at least 5 good pictures, I was going to be content. And damn it, I was. I took them to the drying machine once I had finished the squeegee, came back, it was all dry, so I hung it up, and then I left to make those prints. I spent several days making these prints. 5 of them, to be specific. I chose a picture of an elevator door, some baseball statues, a bridge over that river I was talking about earlier, and of course, the baseball stadium out of the parking garage window. I had to get them all in a crunch since the critique was that Friday. The final developing was all done on that Monday, and I was in a crunch to get this all done. I spent that Tuesday night printing, but only got one out for the night. The next day, Wednesday, I did it again. And with how terrible it sounds, I kinda went without eating to get it all done. But, in my defense, it was Ash Wednesday, and if you're a Christian, you'll know why. Additionally, I had all the time in the world since there was a university club I usually went to on Wednesdays that was canceled that day due to an off-campus event. I got 2 or 3 more prints made that day and finished the last of them on that Thursday. That Friday, it was the critique, and I passed as much with flying colors as the people who had functioning cameras from the beginning. And then, I turned in that second film camera, and I have never had to work with film photography ever again. Moral of the story is that even when everything goes against you, you still shouldn't give up, and there can still be light at the end of the tunnel, even when you are blinded by it. Also, Sea City is a beautiful place to take pictures. Also, don't give up on your passions. So, now that I have spent the past, 21 minutes or so, talking about my experiences with film photography, this is where I'm going to be ending the video. Does anyone else have any weird or interesting photography stories? If you watch my previous stories and history videos, does this format work better or worse? If you like this video, you can like, comment, or subscribe, the whole shebang. Again, only if you want to. I'm not forcing you to do any of that, and the art used in this video will be included in the description below. Anyway, this has been SupernovaBlade, and goodbye.